It's another edition of Back Porch Sports, presented by Duck Club Bourbon. Scott Hamilton here for the next hour, rolling solo around the world of college football, specifically the Southeastern Conference. 2026 college football season almost here, and thank the Lord we're going to be having actual games played and coming out of this summer of a discontent. That's one way to frame it. Summer of discontent. All the legal wranglings and fights and all these other words that have become part of our vernacular. Temporary restraining order, injunction, court order. You get what I'm saying. We continue to be inundated by everything that does not involve actual football. But the games are right around the corner. Not SEC football per se. Week 0, North Carolina versus TCU in Dublin, Ireland, and a scattering of other games. But then we get rolling. SEC starting week 1 with Missouri versus Arkansas Pine Bluff. That'll be on the night of Thursday, September 3rd. And then Oklahoma hosting UTEP the following night. We've got some Oklahoma news later in the show, by the way. Each of those games will be a 7 o'clock Central Time kickoff, and both are on the SEC network. And what a nice appetizer. Labor Day, packed. Auburn versus Baylor in the Chick-fil-A kickoff in Atlanta's Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and then LSU versus Clemson in Baton Rouge. Primetime ABC game down in Death Valley. Labor Day Sunday night, Ole Miss versus Louisville in Nashville. Also a primetime ABC game. So the game's almost here, and once more, thank the Lord that the games are almost here, and we can stop talking about all this other nonsense. But is it nonsense? Could be extremely impactful in the very short term. Here's what I'm talking about. The NCAA taking another L, another loss in a courtroom. It was in a Louisiana courtroom. It happened on August 19th. And man, this one is especially rough or impactful, depending upon how you look at it. A state court judge in Louisiana granting a temporary restraining order that will open the floodgates. Immediately, it's going to allow at least 16 dudes to go back to college, some of whom are on NFL rosters. They can get a 5th year of eligibility, return to play college football now, right away, immediately. That means for this season. This temporary restraining order, a TRO, it's in effect for 10 days and states that the transfer portal will also be open for a week. And normally, the transfer portal guidelines require players to enter must do so within a specific window, but they can exit anytime they want. Well, the judge said, no, it's open now. Y'all go ahead and hop in. So here we go. And check this out. Daquan Watt-Wright, remember the Ole Miss tight end? Pretty good one. One of the best tight ends in college football last year. He is on the Cleveland Browns roster, and he's also in the transfer portal. He's one of 3 former Ole Miss starters that were listed on that temporary restraining order, TRO. He's a good player. Started at Virginia Tech, transferred to Ole Miss 2024, was undrafted last year, initially went to try to make the roster with the Philadelphia Eagles, didn't work out, ended up with the Browns, and now he's in training camp. He was all second team, all SEC last year, 39 catches, 635 yards, 5 touchdowns. He also made some starts at wide receiver for the Rebels, so he's versatile. Now, he is the only player in this temporary restraining order on an active roster who's entered the transfer portal. But some other players, well, they've been to training camps in recent weeks. They've been to rookie mining camps. They've gotten pro experience. Here's another one from Ole Miss. Xavier Harris, defensive tackle. He's with the Saints. TJ Harden, Southern Miss. They're in the portal. 3 others who are involved in the case but have not entered the portal remain on NFL training camps. This one's especially interesting. Tampa Bay Buccaneers linebacker Jack Clyburn, formerly of LSU. He had 2 sacks the other night in a preseason game against the New York Jets. Started 11 games for LSU last season, had 52 tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, pair of sacks. You think Lane Kiffin wouldn't want to have him back? It's just absolutely insane. And it goes back to the NCAA's recently passed age-based eligibility rule. That was enacted in June, and it gave college athletes in all sports 5 years of competition over 5 years, the 5 and 5 that they talk about. It eliminates red shirts. You have 5 years. Medical hardship waiver, not happening. Any kind of other waiver, not happening. 5-5. That's the rule. Okay, great. But athletes who had competed 4 years and exhausted their eligibility without using a red shirt were not grandfathered in. And what we got as a result, a wave of lawsuits and absolute chaos. And the NCAA has rules that prevent athletes from returning to play in college after signing pro contracts, but that's not a problem either. The judge, the one down in Louisiana, cleared a path for such players, put in the order, and this is what it says in the order. I'm going to read it verbatim. Quote, so long as they terminate any such contract and repay any money they have received prior to playing in a collegiate game. All right. Guess what? That's not a problem. If a school wants them, they will have the cash. Think they won't stroke a check here. How much did you make? You made $18,000. Here you go. Gone. You're going to make more than that in NIL money, exponentially more. That's the point of all this. It's the point. Everybody's losing their mind, and maybe rightfully so. This is significant. Adam Schefter, the esteemed NFL reporter for ESPN, Mr. Insider, breaking the news, the dude who's always working his phone. He was on ESPN's First Take the day after this whole quagmire was created by that judge in Louisiana. And he has a very interesting position on it. He basically sums the whole thing up. Here's Adam Schefter on First Take.
There's a lot that's up in the air. What I do know from the NFL standpoint is that on Sunday, August 30th, that is the final NFL cutdown day, there are 32 NFL teams that essentially will be releasing 37 players each. That's 1,184 players. I don't know how many of those 1,184 players have used up all 5 years of their college eligibility, but I would venture to say probably not a lot. So you're talking about the prospect of multiple players who don't make it on the NFL rosters, then having the option, potentially, of going back to play in college football. And then there'll be cases where even a player who has the chance to join a NFL practice squad or even an active roster at the veteran minimum might opt to go back to college football. So college football programs now, as Pete Thamel alluded to, are actually looking at NFL teams and studying preseason tape to figure out how to round out their roster. And if they're bringing in NFL players on September 1st, then that means they're cutting some players from their college programs. And we are living in an unprecedented Wild West world where it's gotten crazier and crazier. And this may be the single craziest moment that we've seen yet.
Wow. He's right. The single craziest moment that we've seen yet, and that's saying something in 2026, given everything that's happened over the last 5 or 6 years. I'm not even talking about the pandemic. I'm talking about the unprecedented wave of changes that has swept over college athletics. The advent of NIL, the transfer portal, you name it, man, the house settlement just keeps going on and on and on and on. 5-5, you could put that at the top of the list. And yet this might top it all. And we saw it back during basketball. Charles Bediako, the former Alabama player, former G League player, now former again Alabama basketball player, getting to play a few games after going to court. But then another judge came to his senses and said, no, we better not do that. That's not a good idea. It's not going to stick. LSU has 4 normal, and I'm using air quotes, normal players on its roster right now as Will Wade tries to stock the Tigers up with guys who were pros. Is it bad? Well, maybe. It depends on how you look at it. Prudent? Probably. You're getting seasoned players, experienced players. And it's the same with football. These guys are going to be coming back to college after having gotten some professional experience, how to train, how to go about their business, learning subtle differences in technique, elevated ways to do this, elevated ways to do that. You don't think that's worth something? That's powerful currency. Make no mistake about it. And the NCAA right now, circling its wagons as much as it ever has. It has until August 31st to show cause why a continuing preliminary injunction should not be granted in this case, which would protect the player's eligibility as the case moves forward. That means shutting down this TRO and saying, hey, let's figure this out later. We can't let them play and then at the end of the road decide it's not cool. And I agree. NCAA likely to appeal this decision. But man, here's a statement from Tim Buckley. He's the senior vice president of external affairs for the NCAA. Here's what he says. I'm going to read this also verbatim. Quote, courts across the country granting relief to ineligible athletes who already have had every opportunity to compete in college, sometimes without even having a hearing, are failing to appreciate the destabilizing effect their rulings are having on college sports. The lawyers bringing these cases seemingly won't be satisfied until every professional athlete can treat college sports as a fallback option, regardless of the opportunities it strips from those who will never have a chance to begin their collegiate sports experience. Close quote. Again, that's a statement from NCAA Senior Vice President of External Affairs, Tim Buckley. I agree. And Schefter said it too. You're going to have college programs that are going to be wanting to make space for these guys coming back from the NFL. And what do? Well, you gotta kick some guys to the curb. You got to tell some players to hit the bricks. Hey, sorry, but not this year, pal. Not going to happen. And then you've got to come up with the money. I mentioned it earlier. Rosters are stacked. Budgets, yes, budgets to pay players. That's a thing. They're presumably everything's already allocated. They're going to have to get more dollars or move some money around. It's just, we've never seen anything like this. And for all the things that I have said about the NCAA, not just the NCAA, but the powers that be in college athletics for not having foresight, I don't know that this would have applied to everything I've said. Because I'm of the belief that a lot of the things that are plaguing us right now could have been avoided, could have been dealt with, and it would never have come to life, actually. Think about this. As long as there has been college athletics, there's been an argument, sometimes loud, sometimes not as loud, that athletes should have been getting compensated. They should have been getting paid. That for all the toiling and efforts and performance and this and that they were not the ones profiting. That the universities were profiting, that the conferences were profiting, the media companies, the sponsors, this, that, and the other. Everybody was making money except the actual athletes. We've heard that argument. And the counter argument was always, well, you're getting an education. You're getting room and board and books and this and that. And that never really held water. Or at least they refused to admit it didn't really hold water. They being the powers that be in college athletics. They kept their head buried in the sand and say the way it is the way it always will be. Well, that ended up being false. Thank you, Ed O'Bannon. Your lawsuit a little more than a decade ago was really what launched Name, Image, Likeness, but I digress. We'll cut that up at another time. But if somebody or somebodies had been prudent enough to realize, you know what? There's always a revolution, man. There's always an uprising. When there's something as contentious as this, as actual compensation, when money gets involved in paying us, there's going to be some kind of uprising. We probably should get ahead of this. How can we do it? Do we start a salary cap? Do we start some kind of, minimal salary cap, something with realistic dollars? And I'm talking not just 5 years ago, 10 years. I'm talking like 30, 40, 50 years ago. And it is college athletics. And when you say college athletics, the word college is in there. College, academia, smart people. Did nobody sit and think, man, I'm not worried about me. I'm not worried about my son, maybe my grandchildren. But going forward, there's going to be a version of college sports that ain't going to be like it is now. It's going to be a far cry from it. And it's going to be built on sand. It's going to be untenable. How can we keep that from happening? How can we put in a foundation, some girders to make this thing stable and to keep it thriving going forward without all the calamity? Nobody did that. It's absolutely shocking. Now we have guys who are literally going from the NFL back to college. And I hate to be that guy. Get off my lawn. Oh, it used to be better in my day. But it used to be better. Used to be once you went to the pros, you were a pro. You couldn't go back to college. Now are we gonna have lawsuits where guys are saying, you know what, I wasn't able to fully leverage all my time in high school. I need to go back to high school. How many guys who turned 18 right before going to college wouldn't love to have another year? Physically more mature, mentally more mature, presumably emotionally more mature. And I know it's not apples to apples because of the 5-5 with college, but I'm using it as an extreme example. Everybody, if they can do it, well, we can do it. And that's the way this is going, one lawsuit after another. Just some stuff to think about. Here's something else to think about. The AP preseason poll, it was released. Got a lot to dissect about that, including the fact that while the Southeastern Conference was well represented, not one single team from the SEC got a first place vote. Not one. What kind of world are we living in? And also the AP All-American team was out. A lot of SEC dudes on it. Couple have my attention, including the second team quarterback. And the SEC loaded with quarterbacks. That's going to be one of the topics we discuss with all-time Georgia great Aaron Murray. He's now an analyst for the SEC Network. He's going to jump aboard the Duncan Williams Asset Management Hotline. Going to break down this class of quarterbacks in the Southeastern Conference and who he thinks might have a really outstanding season after having a bummer of a season. You'll find out who we're talking about later in the show when Aaron Murray joins us. And here's a reminder before we go to the break. If you want to explore the prediction markets, guess what? Kalshi has got your back. It's going to give you a head start. Visit kalshi.com/blitz. You'll get $20 to begin your journey. That's kalshi.com/blitz. I'm Scott Hamilton, and this is Back Porch Sports, presented by Duck Club Bourbon.
We believe Saturdays are built on family, tradition, and the stories that stick with you. Duncan Williams helps protect the legacy behind it all, today, tomorrow, and for what comes next.
It's Back Porch Sports, presented by Duck Club Bourbon. All-time great quarterback for the University of Georgia, Aaron Murray, now an analyst for the SEC Network. He's going to join us in about 15 minutes. Be hopping aboard the Duncan Williams Asset Management Hotline. We're going to discuss the quarterbacks in the Southeastern Conference. Really outstanding class. Every team has a dude, it seems like. Surprisingly, some of the teams that normally have dudes are still trying to figure out who their dude is. Tennessee, who's going to be your quarterback? Alabama, you got one nailed down? I mean, we know names, but the mere fact there's uncertainty at those programs when it comes to QB1 is a little interesting. We'll go over it with Aaron Murray of the SEC Network later in the hour. I mentioned it before the break, the AP Top 25 preseason poll out. And full disclosure, I'm a voter. I've been an AP Top 25 voter for about 14 years now. Take it very seriously, even though I think preseason polls are probably going the way of the dodo bird, especially since the college football playoff is the end-all, be-all. We'll talk about that in a moment. But right now, Ohio State, number 1, Oregon 2, Georgia 3, Notre Dame 4. Clemson, our friends over in the ACC, they're among the others receiving votes crowd. Technically, they're number 26, but here's what's notable about it. The first time Clemson has been unranked in the preseason since 2011. That was Dabo Swinney's third year at the helm of the Clemson Tigers. Worth noting, though, that Chris Carter of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette had the Tigers 15th. And by the way, if you're wondering how we go on our ballots, what our ballots look like, you can go to the AP website, but I also highly recommend checking out collegepolltracker.com. It's fantastic. Those guys get all the ballots. They put them up. You can go right to each voter. You can click on the team and see who has who where. It's really quick. You can look at trends, how voters vote, who they might be underselling, who they might be overselling, so on and so forth. So collegepolltracker.com, absolutely fantastic resource. Some other SEC teams were among the others receiving votes crowd. Florida, South Carolina, Vanderbilt, Auburn. Florida actually would have been 27th if the poll went that far. A lot of people buying stock in John Summerall in Gainesville. I think so. And I've mentioned it before. When you get a new coach, there's always that jolt of interest, that jolt of enthusiasm, a wave of goodness because you feel like you're getting cleansed. It's going to be a fresh start. But it's exacerbated when you get a high energy, all gas, no brakes guy like John Summerall. People in Gainesville are absolutely tickled to death with him. And I think it's contagious. Maybe one or two more wins than they probably should get this year, simply because of all the positivity. And then things settle out a bit. But Florida 27th. Okay. South Carolina would have been tied for 31st with Navy if the poll went that far. And I mentioned it earlier. Takeaway number one. No SEC team got a first-place vote. Not one. 7 voters had Georgia at number 2. 10 voters had Texas second. I'm amongst that. So not one of the 69 voters felt as if an SEC team could win the whole darn thing if the playoffs started this week. That is shocking. That is shocking. But I think it's a bigger testament to the parity in college athletics. I truly do. First of all, think about this. The On3 poll that was released earlier this month, Ohio State was number 1, didn't have a single first-place vote. How does that happen? I think it's because the gaps between 1 and 2, 2 and 3, 3 and 9 aren't nearly as wide as they have been in previous eras. We're in an age now of unprecedented parity. I truly believe that. Yeah, you still have the haves and the have-nots, but there are more of the haves and fewer of the have-nots, and the gaps between the two aren't as great. I think that's to what we attest that to. So, in a playoff format, could an SEC team still win the national title? Absolutely. But so could an ACC team. I'm looking at you, Miami. I wouldn't doubt it if SMU got hot. Having that playoff format changed the entire dynamic, especially when you go to 12-4. Used to be, and I've said this prior, there were probably 6 or 7 teams had a realistic shot of making the college football playoff when it was 4 teams. And only about 2 teams, maybe, that had a real shot of winning the national title. Some years only 1. Did anybody question LSU in 2019? That'll be my primary example. But when you went to 12, you expanded the field, you gave more opportunities, and, of course, rosters have changed thanks once more to the advent of NIL and the house settlement and the transfer portal. So the talent has been more evenly dispersed. If we go to 16, it'd be the same. If we go to 24, I don't know. But that's another topic for another time. Takeaway number 2, and this is one that we cannot sleep on, even though the horse is already out of the barn. No group of 6 team made the entire preseason top 25. Not one. Dominated as expected by the SEC and the Big Ten. 9 for the SEC, 8 for the Big Ten. And also that accurately reflects my ballot. And the rest of it, Power 4 and Notre Dame. ACC, Big 12 getting teams in, and then Notre Dame. The closest thing we had to a G6 team making the preseason AP top 25 was Houston at number 23. And it's now going into its 3rd season as a member of the Big 12. What are we to make of all this? Well, it's pretty obvious. The group of 6 is now officially a developmental level. It's what it is. And we've seen it coming. We knew it was an inevitability because of all the money. The Power 4 stocking its roster, filling gaps, by going down and getting dudes at the G6 level who have performed, who have been developed, and bringing them up, offering them a bag of money and saying, okay, we need a left guard. Let's arbitrarily say we're going to go down to Appalachian State. They've got a really good offensive line. They've got this left guard. He's got 2 years of eligibility left. Let's go get him. And boom, there it goes. That's what happens. And guess what? They get a left guard who has experience, who's had time to develop. He's been to the weight room for a few years. He's been to the training table for a few years. He's been coached on all the techniques and nuances of playing left guard. And he's ready to compete in a Power 4 conference. God bless him. But then App State has to go through the process again, bringing in a guy, presumably from high school, getting him bigger, faster, stronger, better. And maybe to lose him like he lost the other guy. I wonder if we'll have a world. I wonder if we'll have a world where the group of 6 truly becomes developmental in the way of a minor league, where they have relationships with P4 schools, where they say, okay, we're going to develop guys, and they go up to the P4 as needed, when needed. I truly wonder. Unlimited transfer, why not? Would there be some kind of legalities involved in that? I don't know. But if you follow the paths, if you follow the charts and you look at what guys are going to where, you see some trends. You see coaches sending players to former assistants or to former friends or guys they used to work with or whatnot. You see it. There are patterns. So we've kind of already gotten it, but nothing really officially announced or agreed upon. But watch where guys go and then do a little research, and you will soon connect the dots. Here's something else I mentioned earlier in the program. The AP All-American team released a day after the preseason poll. Heavy SEC presence, 6 first-team on offensive players, 8 first-team defensive players, and all SEC backfield. I like it. Kawan Lacey from Ole Miss, Missouri's Ahmad Hardy. Those are the starting running backs. Ahmad Hardy, best running back in the country if he's healthy. Remember, he got shot back in May. Drink says he's going to be good to go. I have to think they're going to ease him in. First few games, give him a designated workload before really unleashing him. That entire team fascinates me. I've been catching grief for it. I've made a few appearances on some different programs regionally and nationally. And Missouri is the team. For some reason, something about it, I just have this really good feeling. I'm not saying they're going to win the SEC by any stretch of the imagination, but I think there could be something special happening there this year. Big part of it, Austin Simmons. He is absolutely fantastic, or at least fascinating to me. He was the QB1 at Ole Miss for a reason. And he lost the job not because of how he was performing, because he got hurt. He got Wally pipped. He got Wally pipped. In comes Trinidad Chambliss, and well, we know how that goes. Trinidad Chambliss now perhaps the best quarterback in America. By the way, he's second-team All-American quarterback. Austin Simmons gone to Missouri, play for Drink, which couldn't be a bad situation. It might be a really good fit for him. I think so. I think Drink is a guy who can connect with him, who can help him develop, who can help him put behind him the fact that he lost his job through no fault of his own last year. I really think that could be the situation. And once more, he can lean on Ahmad Hardy, presuming that he's healthy. I'm looking at the schedule now for Missouri. They've got that opener I mentioned earlier with Arkansas Pine Bluff. Then they're at Kansas, then Troy, then Mississippi State before getting Florida on October 3rd. So Mizzou could be 4-0 before John Summerall and company roll into town. And then they got that stretch. They have Florida, A&M at Missouri, and then they go to Ole Miss. They've got Arkansas. There's no Alabama on the schedule. This could be a special year for them. Once more, not saying win the SEC. Not even going to say go to the college football playoff. But it could be a good season for Missouri, nevertheless. Also interesting. First team AP preseason team defense. Both edge rushers from the Southeastern Conference. Dylan Stewart from South Carolina, Colin Simmons from Texas. That reflects my All-American team as well. Dylan Stewart, man, if he's healthy, remember he injured his back right out of the gate last year for the Gamecocks and really didn't practice the whole time. We're getting bits of information here and there. They say he's healthy. They say he continues to get better. Is he 100%? We don't know. Shane Beamer, the head coach of South Carolina, playing it pretty close to his chest with regards to that. But if he's healthy, he's a true weapon. Worth noting, Dante Moore of Oregon was first-team quarterback, by the way. I mentioned Trinidad Chambliss, second-team quarterback. 7 SEC quarterbacks made the Davey O'Brien watch list. That is super strong. And that backs up what I was saying earlier in the program, that the SEC has just such a wonderful class of quarterbacks this year. I mean, it's phenomenal. And you look at it and you go, any one of these dudes would be the quarterback of the conference, the best quarterback in the conference in any other year. But if not for this guy, or if not for that guy. 7 on the watch list for the Davey O'Brien Award. Remember, that's for the best quarterback in the country. Now, you have some quarterbacks who have things to prove, I'm thinking about a Lenore Sellers at South Carolina who was absolutely so fantastic in 2024, then took a major step back, regressed a bunch in 2025. But in comes Kendall Briles, scrub him clean, unscramble his brain from Mike Shula's mess, and hoping to get him to look more like that player he was in 2024. And then, of course, I mentioned Austin Simmons. What's his situation at Missouri? You've got Arch Manning, for goodness sakes. Don't sleep on Arch Manning. Don't say it's just because of his name or this or that. Yeah, he stumbled out of the gate last year, but it was against Ohio State. Come on, a lot of people stumble against Ohio State. And Arch Manning in the second half of the season looked like a dude. He looked like a Manning. I have to think he's going to be wonderful quarterback for the Longhorns this season, especially when you consider some of the upgrades that they've made via the transfer portal. You get a guy like a Cam Coleman from Auburn, by the way, first team preseason All-American wide receiver. You get a running back from NC State, Hollywood Smothers, who's such a versatile player, a true weapon. I expect big things from Arch Manning this year. Maybe realize the potential that we've expected him to realize since coming out of high school. Just so much to be excited about with regards at least to quarterback play in the Southeastern Conference this season. And that'll be the primary topic of our conversation with Aaron Murray, all-time great quarterback from the University of Georgia, now an analyst for the SEC Network on the other side. You're listening to Back Porch Sports, presented by Duck Club Bourbon.
Good games, good friends, real stories. That's what Saturdays are all about on the Back Porch, proudly sponsored by Duck Club Bourbon.
We're only a few days away from the kickoff to the 2026 college football season. So many storylines to monitor, specifically in the Southeastern Conference. You talk about a loaded class of quarterbacks. The SEC just full of quarterbacks with so much potential. Quarterbacks that have already proven a lot, who have even more to prove. I want to dive deeper into it. Joining us now on the Duncan Williams Asset Management Hotline. He's actually the passing touchdown leader, more touchdown passes than anybody in the history of the Southeastern Conference. He's now an analyst for the Southeastern Conference Network. Aaron Murray, welcome aboard. How are you?
Yeah, doing good. Just excited for the season to get going and get back on these college football campuses and talk with the coaches and players and just feel the energy, especially in the SEC. These stadiums, man, are just so much fun to call a game and be a part of, and obviously bring back a lot of memories of my playing time as well. So, yeah, we're right here, and hopefully with the season comes some cooler temperatures, and I'm not dying of 100 degrees here in Atlanta.
I hear you. Before we get into the season, though, I want to ask you this. One, I knew you led the SEC in passing touchdowns, but it didn't really hit me until this morning that I realized you were ahead of some guys named Manning, even a guy named Matthew Stafford. What is that like? I mean, all you guys get together. I assume you and Matthew Stafford get together at some point, both being Georgia Bulldogs. I mean, is that something you casually drop? Like he can pull out, championship Super Bowl rings, but you can say, yeah, bro, but I got you.
Yeah. Yeah. And he also can show me his big fat bank account. And I'm just like, okay, there you go. No. Listen, I'm very proud of it, and very fortunate that I got to play 4 years. I think that's the hardest thing, is just timing it up right. And I remember when I was going through my recruiting process, not that I was thinking about records when I was getting recruited, but it came down to really Florida and Georgia for me. I wanted to go SEC school, be somewhat close to home, at least driving distance for my parents to get to games and come to campus. So it came down to Georgia and Florida. And you look at Florida's roster at the time, they had Tebow and John Brantley and a guy named Cam Newton. And you're just like, ooh, there's a lot of guys in that room, and some young guys too, obviously in Cam and John Brantley. So it's like, okay, it's going to be a little bit tougher to play, especially early on. And, Georgia had, Stafford, then they had Joe Cox, who was going to be a rising senior. And then, Logan Gray was kind of a quarterback / receiver. So there just wasn't a lot of guys, kind of once Joe was leaving. So I knew I was like, okay, I could redshirt and then have having the ability to play for 4 years if I beat, Zach Mendenberger out, who, we came in together. So, the timing just worked out perfectly to be a 4-year starter, and has some pretty good receivers to throw to, like, AJ Green and Malcolm Mitchell, Tavares King, Marlon Brown, Michael Bennett, down the line. So the stars aligned luckily for me, and hopefully those records stay for a little bit longer.
You said so many things there that we could unpack later. I would love to dive into. I mean, talking about I can redshirt. The fact that you said that's not something we hear nowadays. And then being a 4-year starter, which makes me wonder this, Aaron. What is Aaron Murray worth in 2026 in NIL dollars?
A lot. a lot of money. It would have been nice. I remember I did I tore my ACL, unfortunately, the second to last game of the season versus Kentucky, my senior year. And so I wasn't going to play. So it was around Christmas. So, I made the decision to declare at that point so I could do a signing. So I did a signing in Athens. And I remember I made some pretty good coin. Nothing, these guys would probably laugh at the amount of money I made. But I remember going out that night afterwards, like all the drinks were on me. I felt like the richest man in the world. I was like, oh my God, and now, like I said, that would be nothing compared to these guys. They may even say no, to the amount of money I made. So it's a different world, man. I'm, jealous at times, and you understand that it does add a lot of pressure and some complications, but I would gladly take, $4 to $5 million to handle that kind of pressure that these guys are dealing with.
At the 1AA level, we had a place that would slip us free tacos once a week, but we'll litigate that another time. We're joined by Aaron Murray, former Georgia quarterback. Follow him on X at Aaron Murray 11. Aaron, okay, let's talk about actual football now. And as I said in the introduction, myriad storylines coming into 2026. A lot of storylines regarding the quarterback position. Here's one that's got my attention, and I can't wait to get your insight into this. Austin Simmons at Missouri. Now, here's my contention, and I want to get your response. He was quarterback 1 at Ole Miss for a reason. We just never saw him fully maybe perform to that level because he got injured, and then he got Wally pipped, lost the job to Trinidad Chambliss. He's now at Missouri with a really good situation if Ahmad Hardy is healthy.
Yep.
I think a coach that can connect with him and fully extrapolate all of his abilities. I am buying Austin Simmons stock. Is Aaron Murray buying Austin Simmons stock?
Yeah, I remember 2 years ago I had an Ole Miss game and talking with Lane about Austin Simmons. I mean, he absolutely loved this young quarterback. And then I remember even 2 years ago, the game versus Georgia, when Georgia went to Ole Miss to play, and the starting quarterback goes down with an injury, and in comes Austin Simmons. And what does he do? I was like, okay, this is the moment where Georgia could. I think it was a little bit rainy too. I think Georgia could get a quick, 3 and out, get some good field position, and what does he do? He marches them right down the field for a touchdown, and just making throw after throw after throw. Like, okay, that was the guy that Lane told me a year ago to watch out for, and how talented that he could be, and seeing him do that, and obviously knew that he was going to get the job. And unfortunately, like you said, got hurt and just never really got to get a full season under his belt. But man, the talent's there. There's no doubt about it. You alluded to it. When healthy, Hardy's probably the best running back in college football. And I love what Missouri has been able to build on both sides of the football as a very consistent football team under Eli Drinkwitz. So, I think it's going to be hard to break through into some of the top quarterbacks in this league. I think it's a very, very talented league of quarterbacks. We thought that was going to be the case last year, and ended up not being it. But I do believe that this year we're going to see really good quarterback play throughout the conference. So, I'm not going to sit here and say, like, watch out, he could move into the top 10. But, if he could be, top half of the SEC along with a very strong run game, you're talking about Missouri team that's going to be very difficult to slow down offensively.
And we mentioned Trinidad Chambliss, obviously a huge part of that equation. Now, he's still at Ole Miss, but Charlie Weiss Jr. is not at Ole Miss. He's now at LSU. And I'm wondering how consequential that's going to be, Aaron, having John David Baker in his ear instead of Charlie Weiss Jr. What do you expect?
Yeah, I mean, no Charlie Weiss and obviously no Lane Kiffin. And I think that combination is the best in college football, schematically. The skill set doesn't change. And I did a breakdown of Trinidad last year after one of his first couple games, on my YouTube channel, the Mac and Murray College Football Show, and breaking down what he could do from the quarterback position. And I was like, this guy's got everything. He's got the ability to layer the football. He's got the ability to push the football down the field. Obviously, elite quickness, with inside the pocket. He's got the mobility to get yards with his legs. He's got the quick release to play within the RPO system. So you're like, okay, check. What's wrong with this kid? Oh, he's 5'9", 5'10". If he's 6'1", at least 6'1", we're talking about the first pick in the NFL draft. He's just a little bit obviously on the shorter side for kind of the standard of, what you want for the NFL when it comes to quarterbacks. But when it comes to throwing the football, playing the position, he is elite. So can that translate to any offense? Yes. I think what he's capable of doing doesn't necessarily need Charlie Weiss Jr. or Lane Kiffin to be successful, but to the degree of which he can be successful, I think the best was last year with those two guys. I truly believe that. So I'm not saying you're going to get a significant drop in production. I just don't think you're going to get that much more in production from him this year without Lane Kiffin and Charlie Weiss Jr.
How much of a change schematically could we see at Ole Miss? Because on the one hand, you have this quarterback who is just he's talented as all get out. Could be the number one pick overall in the NFL draft. I'm going to throw that out there. I've seen it a few places. But he's only going to be there for 1 year. I mean, he's lucky to get this last season as it is. You've got a new offensive coordinator. Do you continue to mold the offense around him, or do you start bringing in stuff that you're going to integrate into the system in years after Trinidad Champions?
No, you always tailor to, you tailor to the players you have on that year's roster. And especially when you have, at the end of the day, we all know it's like if you have a quarterback, you have a chance to win, and you want to win. You're not planning for next year. I mean, you have potentially a Heisman caliber quarterback right now, 2026. So you're going to do everything in your power to make him comfortable, to put him in a system where he can go out there and play fast. And then after that, you figure it out come next season. But no, I think you look at last year's tape, you look at all the good things that he did, which, like I just talked about, is a lot of really good things. There's a lot any offensive coordinator can do, especially, John David Baker, with Trinidad Chambliss. So I think this offense will be explosive once again. Just like we talked about with Missouri, you're going to have a really good running game and a great running back coming back as well in Lacey. So it's going to be fun to see, what this team can do minus Lane. I think they still got a chip on their shoulder after what happened last year. So hopefully they use that all off season heading into this season. And so we'll learn a lot about Ole Miss week 3, in that game versus LSU. And, if they're able to take care of LSU, who I expect to be a contender this year in the SEC, I think I start changing my narrative about where Ole Miss could be come, December and January.
Just a couple more minutes with Aaron Murray. Follow him on X at Aaron Murray 11. Aaron, here's the one that I'm just fascinated by. Lenore Sellers. I watched Lenore Sellers last year, and I can tell you that I felt the only time he was comfortable was that opening drive against Virginia Tech in the Chick-fil-A kickoff, because that thing had been scripted arguably for 6 months, perhaps for 6 months. After that, I felt like he was questioning himself. And I know it sounds kind of cliche, but I felt like he was trying to play quarterback in the Mike Shula system rather than going out and playing football as he had in 2024 when Dow Loggins was the offensive coordinator. Mike Shula now gone. In comes Kendall Briles. How much of Kendall Briles' job is just basically being a therapist or any kind of comforting effect or comforting person with Lenore Sellers, and how much of it is actually being a coach saying you need to do this, this, and this?
Well, I also think the talent around him in 2024 was significantly better. And let's not forget the defense was also pretty darn elite for South Carolina. You look at that roster and you look at the running back position. I thought Rocket Sanders had a really good year coming over there from Arkansas to South Carolina. Joshua Simon at the tight end position, was a terrific matchup nightmare for defenses. And the one thing that Lenore's has never really had is consistent receiving play. Obviously they've been trying to squeeze every little, thing they can get out of Nick Harbor. And hopefully, he continues to progress as a natural receiver and not just a track guy playing the receiving position. But you're hoping to get more out of him. Other guys have to step up at that receiving position. Obviously, you love the ability to run the football. I believe last year they didn't have a running back with over 500 yards rushing. So I know Lenore's didn't have the season that he wanted, but once again, like the roster around him was not the same roster it was the year before. Lack of a run game, lack of receiving play, defense wasn't as good. So I think, if you're able to get some support, like I said, if the receivers are playing better, I do think Kendall Briles can scheme up some stuff because Lenore's is an amazing talent. I remember I covered him actually his first game 2 years ago, covering him again middle of the season when they went to Vanderbilt. And what a great kid, hardworking kid, all the talent in the world, great size, really good runner. I think he's a good thrower of the football. I wouldn't say like elite, but I think he can make all the throws you want, if not even more. So hopefully it's a good marriage. But at the end of the day, as a quarterback, you're only as good as the guys around you, man. And unless you're Cam Newton, you could just really be Superman. Lenore's needs the guys around him to go out there and win some one-on-one battles on the outside.
And don't forget bad offensive line.
Yes.
You're absolutely horrible offensive line. My last question for you, Aaron Murray. You can follow Aaron Murray on X, by the way, Aaron Murray 11. My last question for you. We talk about Kendall Briles. We talk about the Kendall Briles offense, the Art Briles offense. And one of the things that really drives that offense is a power run game component. And it helps when you have the quarterback, I guess, who can run between the tackles if he needs to. Is this the perfect system for Lenore Sellers, especially in 2026 when he's trying to maybe clean his mind and go back to just playing natural and free?
Yeah, I think, for a lot of quarterbacks, they get caught up in, how do I project for the next level? I don't want to run the ball, 12, 15 times. I don't want to be labeled as a running quarterback. I want to be labeled as a quarterback. And let's not forget, like, yes, we want to win championships. We want to win in college, but there's also a part of us that you want to put ourselves in a situation to get hired to the NFL. That's a dream for every young football player is to go play in an NFL roster. And yes, it was a dream for me and everyone else as well to play college football. So I think we kind of have to get out of our own minds of, the NFL just wants to see good play. They want to see you take care of the football. They want to see you, take care of your body. So I think running the football is something that he's going to have to do, but it's doing it smartly. It's knowing when to get down, when to run out of bounds, not take unnecessary hits. But they just want to see you win football games. Can you win games? I don't care how it's done, pretty, ugly, whatever it is. Are you a leader of men? So I think the big message to Lenore is find ways to win, take care of the football, and do whatever it means. And you have to trust your coaching staff. I think that's the biggest thing too. This coaching staff knows how hard to push him. They see him day in and day out. They know if he's physically struggling or not and when to pull back the reins a little bit with running, because he's one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC if he's got a good supporting cast. And they know that in the building. So they're not going to put him in a situation where he's going out there running into a brick wall 20 times a game throughout the season. But there may be games where he has to. But yeah, I still think that there's a need and want to develop him as a passer, and then utilize his legs when need be.
He threw more touchdown passes than anybody in the history of the Southeastern Conference. He's now an outstanding analyst for the SEC Network. Follow him on X at Aaron Murray 11. Aaron, I know you're busy. I appreciate you carving out some time, buddy. We got to get you back on soon.
I appreciate it. Y'all have a fun season.
All right, that's Aaron Murray joining us on the Duncan Williams Asset Management Hotline. It's Back Porch Sports, presented by Duck Club Bourbon. We're making the final lap. This edition of Back Porch Sports, presented by Duck Club Bourbon. I want to thank Aaron Murray, all-time great quarterback at the University of Georgia, now an analyst for the SEC Network, for joining us on the Duncan Williams Asset Management Hotline. And one final reminder, if you want to explore the prediction markets, well, guess what? Kalshi has got you covered. Kalshi going to give you a head start. Just visit kalshi.com/blitz. You'll get $20 to begin your journey in the prediction markets. That's kalshi.com/blitz. Got a few tidbits here to get to before we close up this episode. Number one, this is interesting. Interesting take here, or interesting news. Alabama and Tennessee to both wear home uniforms for their annual game. The third Saturday in October rivalry will be like a color rush. Alabama and Tennessee to wear their home uniforms when they meet this season at Neyland Stadium in Knoxville and next year at Bryant-Denny Stadium in Tuscaloosa. Used to be a tradition, apparently. First time since 1970 that this is going to happen. It's going to be colorful. It's going to be something different. Alabama and Tennessee have played 108 times going back to 1901. When I think of this rivalry, I don't really think of the uniforms. I mean, traditional uniforms, yeah. I mean, obviously this was a thing before I was born, but I always think about the victory cigars. I love the victory cigars. I think that's pretty cool. But apparently, before 1970, the Tide and Orange would wear their home jerseys. College rules now requiring one team to wear dark and the other team to wear white, but exceptions can be made upon request, and I guess they felt like it. And there are some other instances when this happens. You think about Southern Cal and UCLA. Trojans wear cardinal. That's their official color. The UCLA wears that powder blue, which I think is absolutely lights out. They wear their home uniforms when they play in that crosstown rivalry. And also the Holy War. One of the best rivalries in college football. We don't make enough of that. I mean, it's not the Iron Bowl. It's not the game, Ohio State, Michigan, but it's really good, especially those people out there. Utah will wear crimson. BYU will typically wear blue. And there are some others where it happens. Kansas and Missouri, they wear their home uniforms. Iowa, Iowa State, the Cyhawk game. Oregon, Washington. Florida State, Florida. Kentucky, Louisville. Blue versus red in the Bluegrass State. Talk about clashing. So some people not happy about it. Let me know what you think. Hit me up on social media at Scott H Sports on Twitter/X. Do you like the home uniforms for the third Saturday in October? Do you like Tennessee wearing orange on the road down in Tuscaloosa? Let me know what you think at Scott H Sports on Twitter/X. Here's the bigger news. Oklahoma coach Brent Venables got an extension. He got a big extension. 2 years added to his contract. It's going to go through 2031 now. It's going to average $10.5 million a year. Woo! Makes him one of the top 10 highest paid coaches in America with this new deal. I'm wondering this. Yeah, he's done a pretty good job at Oklahoma, though you could argue he was on the hot seat after a couple years ago. Then they rebounded last year, went to the playoff. He always has an elite defense. He's been on the coaching staff of 8 teams that have at least made the national championship game. But is he worth this kind of money? It seems to me almost like Oklahoma is basically playing for a glorified elite defensive coordinator. Remember, Brent Venables doesn't really oversee roster management, player procurement. That's Jim Nagy. He's that guy now. He oversees roster management, NIL contracts, transfer portal. And that's not uncommon. You see that happening in a lot of programs. The general manager role now is as prevalent as anything. But that's not Brent Venables' strength. It's putting together these defenses and motivating the team and so on. Does that make him worth $10 million? He's not. Is he that hands-on? I shouldn't say that. Is he that hands-on with roster procurement? I don't know. And yeah, they did go 6-2 in the Southeastern Conference last year, and they made the college football playoff. They lost to Alabama at home, but I can't say that I think he's worth this money. And when you look at the rankings that are put out, and make of those what you will, they're all subjective. He's often not in the top 30 nationally. I'm looking right now. CBS Sports has Venables ranked 28th nationally among all 68 P4 head coaches. Number 8 in the SEC. Sporting News has him 23rd nationally. USA Today has him 10th in the Southeastern Conference. He's worth $10 million because of that? I don't know that makes sense. Make the math. Once more, elite putting together a defense, but you've got to be well-rounded. And sometimes the offense, and I will give him credit. There have been a couple instances where the offense being so bad wasn't entirely the ineptitude of a coaching staff or anything like that. They were riddled with injuries a couple of years ago, I recall, especially across the offensive line, but still. And you think about some of the issues they had last year after John Mateer injured his hand after the 4th game. I don't understand this. I don't understand the need to give him this extension now. Was he going anywhere? Was anybody courting Brent Venables? Was anybody making a run at him? You could even say Kalen DeBoer, yeah, that was a preemptive move because he had been courted by Michigan. Other people had made inquiries about Kalen DeBoer and love him or hate him or however you look at him. The fact of the matter is he's one of the top 10 coaches in America. Nobody was going after Brent Venables. Was this a panic move by Roger Denny? Remember, Roger Denny is the new athletic director at the University of Oklahoma. He started in February for the longtime AD, the great Joe Castiglione. Did he not want to have to take a chance on a coaching search? Did he dread the prospect of a coaching search so much that he said, you know what? We're going to lock this guy down through 2031. And we're going to do it at $10 million because, damn it, I don't want to do a coaching search. I mean, it has to be. I'm truly baffled. I'm truly baffled because he was not going anywhere. I have not heard Brent Venables' name mentioned for any job outside the one he currently has. And yet Oklahoma felt the need to back up the Brinks truck and give him $10 million a year, making him $10.5 million average, actually, making him among the top 10 highest paid coaches in America. That's something to unpack for sure and something to ponder until the next time we're together. But that's it for this edition of Back Porch Sports. Once more, I want to thank Aaron Murray, all-time great quarterback at the University of Georgia and now an analyst for the SEC Network. He joined us on the Duncan Williams Asset Management Hotline. Don't forget to check out our podcast on YouTube. Like, subscribe, follow. Whatever you do for podcasts, do it for this one. Leave us a comment. And also hit me up on social media. Head on over to Twitter/X at Scott H Sports. The DMs are open. If there is a topic you would like me to discuss, I'll be happy to do it. If you have a question, comment, complaint, suggestion, whatever, hit me up. And if there's a guest you would like me to have on, I will do my darndest to facilitate it. But otherwise, until next time, this has been Back Porch Sports, presented by Duck Club Bourbon.